Hello again. This is another installment of The Basics, and this time I'm doing deck building for the Star Trek Customizable Card game. Now, this is a CCG that I know very well, I'm very experienced in, I've been to tournaments. I have been playing the Star Trek CCG since 1994 when it originally came out. I have built many a deck over the years, and deck construction in the Star Trek card game is a lot different than most card games because there are several phases of the game itself. You have to have several different decks built into one for this to work. So if you'll stick with me, I'm going to show you my Federation deck and give you an idea of how deck building works for this card game. One of the things that always fascinated me about the Star Trek card game was the fact that it did have multiple phases that you have to do to play the game. And you don't have to be a Star Trek fan to play this game. It does help. It helped me. But it's just the whole game experience that makes it awesome. Now, when you're deck building for the Star Trek card game, I'm using my Heavy Federation deck as an example. One of the first things you need to do with deck construction is when you decide which affiliation you're going to play as, you need outposts and you need missions. So I'll spread these out a bit more here so you can see. Missions are what you need to attempt to score points. The basis of the game and to win the game is to score 100 points before your opponent. Now you might think that's easy, but it's not. As you're choosing missions for your deck, and this is part of the seed deck, which goes first, you also have to have a large stack of dilemma cards to put under your opponent's missions. Dilemmas are there to inhibit your opponent from completing the mission and gaining the points. And for people to complete missions and to get past the dilemmas, you have to have personnel. I'm just going to use these three as an example to go aboard your ship to get you to the missions. And the mission success and passing the dilemma is all based on these attributes that they have. Unfortunately, throughout the game, there's going to be cards come out like these events, heavy cards like Rescue and QNet, which prevent you or your opponent from completing missions, doorways to help you bring out other cards, and I'm going to show you here, there are even some high-powered cards called interrupts, which play during your opponent's turn. This one being Countermanda, this is very heavy. It nullifies certain cards or enhances other parts of the gameplay. You and your opponent are going to be doing this as you are attempting to complete missions and score points, as well as have ship-to-ship and personnel battles. So it's a very involved game. It probably takes longer than most games to play because there are many, many facets of the game you have to go through. I have several decks made up for this game as well. I usually have 4 or 5. And I have my Federation deck, which lives in that box. I also have the bulk of my CCG collection for Star Trek with all my extra cards, which I'm constantly swapping out when a deck either loses. Even when a deck wins, it's good to change it up a bit. Now, as I mentioned in the previous installment with the Magic card game, the same rules to deck building apply when you're working with the Star Trek card game. A deck you use against your friends or with house rules is going to be completely different than the deck you use in a tournament. I should know, I've been to tournaments. That being said, however, this Federation deck and my board deck, which I'm not showing you, those are the only 2 decks I have that are set up for either tournament or house. They're actually strong enough to go through a tournament, but I can swap out a few cards and play them in a house game, no problem, and have some fun. Because I don't want to destroy people in a house game. I want to have fun. And if the game's closer, it's better. But again, when you switch gears and go to a tournament, you're there to win. You're going to have some fun, but your primary goal is to win. It's as simple as that. I'm going to have more on another episode about side decks, because that's a huge facet in itself in the Star Trek card game, which I don't have time to get into today. Okay? Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Have a good day.